The witch from Pixar's Brave was one of the more mysterious characters in the movie, and because of that, the internet has been flooded with fan theories about her. But one thing is certain about the character, whether it's considered a theory or not, and it's that when she gave Merida that pie that turned her mother into a bear, she had ulterior motives. It's unclear exactly what those motives were, but after rewatching Brave, it's clear that they weren't good because, believe it or not, throughout the movie, Merida uncovered a few details about the witch and her past deeds that prove she might not have been as innocent as Disney made her out to be. In fact, you could even argue that Pixar originally hinted that the witch was going to be a villain, or at least a sinister character in Brave, before they ever released any information about mor'du. Back when everyone was still speculating as to what the actual premise for Pixar's first female-led movie was, one of the big questions was wondering what sort of antagonist the movie was going to have. For a while, all the studio was releasing was information and pictures about the Highland Forest setting, so when Collider announced an exclusive excerpt from an interview that they did with Pixar executives, the internet went sort of crazy. There were articles coming out all over the place claiming that the villain of Pixar's Brave is revealed, which was one of the headlines for a Gizmodo article. And the entire article was about how many believed the witch was going to be the problem that Merida would be forced to face, and they weren't entirely wrong. The Collider excerpt described the witch by first referring to her as the crafty carver. It then went on to explain, but the mysterious recluse is more than meets the eye, which was followed by a description of Merida discovering that the woman was a witch. But the descriptive use of terms like mysterious recluse or witch, and then claiming that there was more than meets the eye when it came to her character, had fans immediately wondering if she was a good or bad character, with most of the articles published leaning toward bad. And although she might not have proved to be as outright ruthless as mor'du was in the movie, the witch still proved to be less than innocent with the way she presented her customers with answers to their problems. Now, when it came to the way that the witch dealt with Merida was also something that's always overlooked by fans because of the immediate threat of mor'du. But when you think about it, if the witch was supposed to be good, she would have handled the princess's problem in a much more considerate way, or perhaps she would have just chosen not to help Merida at all. Either one would have been a better sign of a good character than turning the queen into a bear, which was exactly what happened. In the movie, Merida discovered the witch's hut after a line of the will-o-wisps led her there, and once she was inside, she laid eyes on the elderly woman who claimed to be a simple woodcarver. Merida was shown to be a very perceptive character and almost immediately discovered that the old woman was really a witch. Granted, she did see the broom moving on its own, so it was a fairly simple assessment. However, if Merida was smart enough to realize that she wasn't as nice of an old witch as she appeared to be, maybe the queen would have never had to worry about becoming a bear forever. And there were definitely signs that Merida could have seen that were clear warnings to run away. In the movie, after Merida called the witch out for being one, the old lady not only responded by saying she wasn't a witch because of too many unsatisfied customers, but she then tried to chase Merida out of her hut with floating knives. That's crazy. You don't point knives at someone else if you're a good person. It just doesn't really happen except under very specific circumstances that the witch definitely wasn't under. It was only when Merida offered to literally buy out her entire woodcarving shop that the witch in Brave stopped trying to forcibly remove her from the premises and immediately changed her tone. As soon as she saw the sight of silver in the form of the necklace that Merida offered to pay with, greed took over and the witch was more than happy to squeeze the young princess for all that she was worth and have a little bit of fun while she was at it. As you probably know from watching the movie, the spell that the witch gave Merida was in the form of a cake and was supposed to change her mother. Here's the thing though, Merida implied to the witch that she wanted her mother's mindset to change, not her physical appearance to change, and the witch seemed to understand that. But instead of giving her a spell to change the queen's mind, the old witch gave Merida a spell that changed her mother into a bear. And to make her seem even more villainous, Pixar implied that the witch knew this would happen because when Merida returned later on in the movie with her mom as a bear, the witch was gone, but she left a message for Merida. And in that message, the spellcaster warned her that the effects could become permanent. To make matters even more messed up, the witch knew exactly how Merida and her mother could break the curse, but instead of telling them, she was basically like, oh, you'll figure it out. And then she left them a riddle, not even one that was written down either, a verbal riddle. She left them a verbal riddle that exploded her house when Merida tried to hear the message again. Now, she might not have been Ursula-level evil, but the witch is definitely working her way onto the Disney villains list. It's also important to note that the incident with Merida and the Queen wasn't the first time that the witch had used a spell to turn someone into a bear, seemingly on purpose. princess. As a matter of fact, she was the one who created the feared bear of legend, mor'du. The witch herself told the tale of what happened in the animated short, The Legend of Mor'du, and in that she explained that when she first met the massive bear, he wasn't a bear at all. He was a human prince from an ancient and forgotten kingdom. He came to her seeking help to secure the throne because he felt that he was the rightful heir. And in short, the witch pointed out that she could feel the darkness in his heart, yet she decided to give him a choice, knowing that he would give in to temptation and ultimately lose himself, which is just another indication that the witch really wasn't so innocent. According to the short, the prince asked her for a spell that would supposedly change his fate and give him the strength of 10 men before offering up his signet ring as payment. And just like with Merida, greed overtook the witch, and in response, she gave him a spell that came with a choice. He could either use it to fulfill his dark wish, or he could use it to reunite with his family who he was fighting against for the throne. Now, she gave him this choice after admitting that she could see the wounded soul inside of him, which indicates that she most likely knew he would give in to the dark urges. And in doing so, the short showed that the prince transformed into the savage bear that ended up becoming a feared legend by everyone in the Highlands. And much like Merida, the witch didn't warn the prince that this transformation into mor'du would become permanent, and ever since then, he's been brutally murdering any poor soul that he happened to come across. So, while the witch in Brave might not have been cruel or outright villainous, there is a chance that she wasn't completely on the good side, especially since she knew what would happen to Merida because the spell had already been used once on someone else. And interestingly enough, while making this video, there came about a theory that could possibly hold some weight about Merida and her connection to mor'du and the witch. You see, in this deluxe theory, the possibility is considered that the witch gave Merida the cake that would turn her mother into a bear in hopes of creating a second mor'du. When Merida showed up at the witch's hut, she likely would have recognized the similarities between the Scottish princess and the prince that she turned into mor'du all those years ago. And because the witch likely wasn't a good character, she might have thought that it was time to have some fun again and decided to mess with royalty once more. So she gave Merida the cake, hoping that she would eat it to change instead of her mother. And because Merida had a bit of darkness in her heart at the time, the witch would have believed that she could manipulate her just like she did with mor'du, turning Merida into a bloodthirsty bear. Now, this theory is certainly a long shot, but when you think about the similarities between Merida and the prince who became mor'du, it's actually not too crazy. For instance, both of the characters wanted desperately to change their kingdoms. Granted, they wanted to do it in entirely different ways for entirely different purposes. While the prince wanted to be the one true ruler of his kingdom, Merida in the movie simply wanted the freedom to make choices for herself instead of sticking to nonsense traditions that made no sense. On top of that, they were both the rightful heirs to their respective kingdoms and the next in line for the throne. And the prince and Merida also both held a bit of contempt toward their families, though once again for very different reasons. So if the witch was truly supposed to be a bad character, which it sort of seems like she was, then there's a chance that she would have tried to create a second mor'du to destroy the kingdom just like her first creation did. What do you think about the witch though? Was there something more sinister about her character than Disney led fans to believe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.